Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Face Forward podcast, the podcast that explores how candidates become the face of change voters are already seeking, and how to do it deliberately. Today's episode is a little different. What you're about to hear was originally pre-production conversation with Bob Kerrey, a logistical discussion ahead of a scheduled recording a few days later. But as we began talking, it quickly became something more. What emerged was a candid, wide-ranging conversation covering ideas and perspectives that, interestingly, never came up in the formal interview that followed. So rather than leave it on the cutting room floor, as we say, we thought it was worth sharing, because it offers a more unfiltered look at how someone who has won repeatedly in a challenging political environment thinks about public life, leadership, and his relationship with voters. We hope you find it as interesting as we did. Vaughn, let's go to you and your conversation with Bob Kerrey.
You were very, very successful in a state that is not Democrat friendly today, and was not that Democrat friendly in the past. I don't think it's voted for a Democrat for president since 1964, if I'm right. So it's very interesting for us how you managed to be so successful in that world, why you went into public life in the first place, and I think what you think are the strengths of people and weaknesses of people who are running for office today, particularly the presidential election in 2028. So those are the three broad themes. Does that gel for you?
Yes.
So I just give you an idea. I think we sent you a list of sample questions, and so
Yes.
I can run through them. And if there are any you're particularly keen to spend more time on, because there are too many here, to be honest with you, for a 30-minute interview. But if there are any that you want to spend more time on, any that you want to think about, any that you want to take out, just let us know. And I guess the first question is, what before you ran for office, did you have an idea of what you would like the United States to be? What kind of change you wanted to represent?
No,
No.
I didn't. I mean, I came back from the Vietnam War in 1969, pretty badly injured, and I would say thanks to sex, drugs, and rock and roll, I cleared up my PTSD and went into business 2 years later in restaurants in Omaha. My brother-in-law and I did, and I was in business for 10 years. And during that time, I had many opportunities to go before elected bodies, city councils, county boards, state legislatures, some cases even the Congress, not really going before them, but appealing to them. Congress was appealing to them to end the Vietnam War. But the rest of it was getting zoning permits, getting permits of all kinds. You know, you're dealing with elected people. And my brother-in-law and I were out skiing in Jackson Hole, Wyoming in December of '81, and I just on the lift, I told my brother-in-law I'd been watching politics, and when I got back to Nebraska, I was going to shave off my mustache and run for governor, and I did, and I won. And it was an unusual time because '82 was it was sort of a Democratic year in a way. If I'd run in '80 or '84 as a Democrat, I might not have won. As it was, I only won by 6,500 votes. So, which is a little over 1% of the total vote count. But I mean, I was very, very naive about sort of big picture politics, and very focused on small picture politics, which was the difficulty that elected people were having voting for in the affirmative or in the negative either way, when a relatively small group of people were objecting to what they were doing. So it wasn't so much that the voters wanted change as I sensed they just wanted somebody that came in there and would say, okay, we've got fiscal problems. They're not that difficult to solve. And there were 4 or 5 things that need to be done. There were a number of other things that I campaigned on, but I'm telling you, when I got through that election, whatever it was, the 6th or 7th of November of 1982, I sort of looked around and said, okay, now what do we do? we didn't won this election. So, and I had to put a budget together. I had to put a budget
Right.
together and submit it to the legislature in 60 days. So,
Right.
um, I didn't
So,
have a big world view at the time
no.
in 1982.
Okay, but one thing you did do, which was interesting, is you switched party affiliations in the late 70s, I think. And
78.
yeah, and that you switched to the party which was the weaker party in Nebraska, and it would have been easier to win as a Republican in Nebraska in a normal year, in an average year.
Yeah.
So was there a reason behind your switch,
Yeah,
particularly?
78, a number of things happened. My mother, with whom I was very close, died of Lou Gehrig's disease. I had the last surgery on my leg, which enabled me to do things I couldn't do before. And
Yeah.
perhaps most relevant to your question, I got divorced. And I started dating a woman who was active in the Democratic Party, and I switched parties because of her.
Oh,
So, it wasn't like, oh God, I better
Visionary.
get in the Democratic Party because that's the party that I'm most comfortable with. I've remained a Democrat because most of my values align with what I consider still to be the Democratic Party.
right. So you got into office. You said, "What do we do now?" Which I don't know whether you've seen the film. Have you ever seen the movie The Candidate at all with
Oh,
Robert
sure.
Redford?
Sure,
And
that's where
that's the end. That's
yes,
the end thought.
that's where that line comes from. I stole it from Robert Redford.
So, but then you were governor for. I mean, you were governor for 4 years, and the voters of Nebraska were sufficiently impressed to re-elect you to the Senate in
Although,
1980.
although in '83, my chief of staff came in and said, "There's a press conference going on later this afternoon. The people that are producing a movie in Lincoln called Terms of Endearment, and Jack Nicholson's going to be there." And I thought, "Yeah, I got to go meet him." But I
Mhm.
also at the press conference was Deborah Winger, and we started dating. And when she came to
Ah.
Nebraska, she stayed at the governor's mansion. And the Omaha World Herald, which was horrified by that, did an opinion poll and found out that, I don't know, 75% of Nebraskans thought it was okay for her to stay in the mansion. Then they did a poll on me and found that only 63% thought it was okay for me to stay in the mansion. So it wasn't like, it wasn't like I was, free of any conflict or that sort of thing. So,
Right.
yeah, I was, and then I was a lot of serendipity in my life when it comes to not just politics, but other things. So I pretty much finished everything that I wanted to do. I announced I
Mhm.
wasn't going to run again. I got an offer from a man who became a really dear friend of mine from
Mm.
Nebraska. He was the head of the Department of Religious Studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara, to go to Santa Barbara and teach a class on the Vietnam War with him,
Mhm.
actually the impact of the war on America. I knew almost nothing about the war other than I'd fought in it and didn't like it. And so I studied the history of it. And
Mhm.
the senior senator in Nebraska died. I'm pretty confident I would not have run for the Senate had I run for reelection for governor.
Right.
But here I am out in Santa Barbara, come back for Senator Zelensky's funeral, and the pallbearers were urging me to run. So in the
Right.
end, I ran for Senate and won, ran for Senate again, and then met a woman, fell in love with a woman in New York, and next thing I know, I'm living in New York.
Right. But you ran also, but
That's
you
a
won.
common theme.
Yeah.
Women are turning points in your life, clearly. I don't know if you counted
Yeah.
them in our theory.
Right, it could be.
But let me ask you again about 88 and 94, because those were not good years for Democrats. 88, Dukakis lost, not disastrously, but he lost to Bush. And 94 was a real Republican sweep year, but you managed to win. And I think one of those elections was by large margins. So clearly you meant something to people in Nebraska, not just
I
a
did.
balanced budget. You meant more than that.
Well, I did. I mean, and the feeling was mutual. I mean, I did then and still do love the state. I knew it much better than since I've come to New York. I actually went back out there in 12 and ran. I think largely lost because I was no longer in Nebraska.
Mhm.
I'd gone to maybe the city that scares them the most, New York, and
Mhm.
so it's yeah. I think that they regarded me as one of their own, and
Right.
so when I ran in '88, it was sort of more like a homecoming than anything. I hadn't left the state. I was out in California,
Mhm.
but It was more like a homecoming than I really expected at the time.
So if we went back in a time machine and
I'd like to do that.
and we walked down the streets of Omaha, what would people say about you?
They would know who I was. I mean, I've been gone for 20 plus years.
Well, no, back in the 90s.
Oh, the time machine.
88, 90. Yeah.
Oh, what would they say? God, I don't know. He dated Deborah Winger. What year are we talking about?
88, 94, and 94.
Oh, they would definitely have said, you know, that I had dated Deborah Winger, that they probably would have noted the Medal of Honor, a recipient of the Medal of Honor. I don't know. It could have been any number of things like that. He was our governor, and we liked him. Although one of my favorite political memories of Nebraska is I discovered that Iowa had a tremendous amount of bike trails. We didn't, and they had it because when the Missouri River moves, the land in Iowa becomes public. Land in Nebraska becomes private, and all we needed to do to get access to those was to build a pedestrian bridge. So we built a bridge.
Right.
And they, the first time I walked across that bridge, a guy coming from Iowa from the other side on a bicycle, I heard him hit his brakes as he passed me. He came back and he said, I didn't vote for you when you ran for governor. Every time you ran, I never voted. I didn't like anything you did. I didn't even like this.
I'll ask you another question. So you talked about a fiscal challenge in Nebraska, and we didn't talk of. You talked about the pathways or bike pathways opportunity. When you were a governor and/or a senator, how did you define in your head right and wrong? What were your first principles as a starting point?
Oh, it's a very good question. It certainly is case by case. Some of the more contentious ones, let's take the right of a woman to make her own reproductive decisions, marriage equality, those sorts of things, where you cut quickly into morality. And the conflict between the desire to let people be free and make their own moral decisions and the need to preserve culture in some way, shape, or form. Culture is important. Culture really is, what defines immigration. We want to be a nation of people, and we have an idea of what that means, and it can get controversial in a hurry. Reproductive rights is probably the best one, because when I first ran for office in 1982, I went up to Omaha to meet with a group of people who were prominent in the Catholic Church and politically active, and they were, I'd never read Roe v. Wade. I knew almost nothing about it, and actually answered their question incorrectly. They asked about abortion. I said, God, I don't know. I've never had to buy one. Is there a shortage that we're talking about? And no, there's not a shortage. We have too many of them. They said, we want to make it illegal. I don't know. So over time, I've come stronger and stronger and stronger on the side of secularism, of saying the government really should not intervene with moral decisions like that. Who to marry, what to be, all that sort of thing, how to dress, all this. It can get messy in a hurry, and particularly today when you've got administration with people like Pete Hegseth, he regards me as an enemy. He explicitly described people who are secular, people who are humanists, as enemies, and that we've damaged the country in the 1970s. And by his lights, we have. So I embrace secular humanism today in a way that I never did in 1982 or 1988 or 94. And so part of it is saying, okay, now I've got to play defense against people who want to turn the clock back. So it's not it's not that my own political views today are different than what they were in 82 on a number of issues, but nothing more clearly, I think, than moral issues like abortion and marriage. But over time, so one of the things I was starting to say before I disconnected myself is that My overall story is I like to build things, institutions and buildings. And so one of the ways that I established myself in Nebraska was working with the communities to build things. It could be a park. Parks are a
Right.
big part of my mission, because I just believe it's perhaps the most important thing you can do for the middle class. The middle
Right.
class doesn't go on vacation to the Bahamas typically. They go to a state park.
Right.
And likewise, educational institutions, childcare institutions, all kinds of institutions. Typically, it's a local community. There's a group out in McCook, Nebraska. Current governor reversed a decision we made in the 1990s to build a correctional facility in McCook that would reduce the rate of recidivism
Right.
for nonviolent offenders. And 90% of the guys that were out there went back into society. And unfortunately, the governor turned it into a federal detention center, and the uh, former, now fortunately head of Homeland Security, called it the Cornhusker Clink. So we were, and those were all Republicans. They were
Right.
all conservative Republicans in that community, and they knew I'd work with them. I established relationships with law enforcement people in almost every community. So when I ran in '94, and when I got to the Senate, I got there in '88 when actually 88 when the Senate was being organized, and there were three men running for majority leader: George Mitchell, Danny Inouye, and Bennett Johnston. I asked all of them to be on the Appropriations Committee, and all of them to go on Intel, because I'd done that in SEAL Team. And Danny, who I loved, and Bennett, who I loved, both said, "I'll do what I can." And George Mitchell said yes. So I voted for
Right.
George. He won, and I was on the Appropriations Committee, and I could build. I could work
Right.
with people at the local level to build, including that bridge that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
That wasn't just
Right.
my idea. There was lots of people. So one of the ways that I would try to establish a simple principle, which is you can get things done.
Yeah.
You can move the needle. And people say, "Well, Washington doesn't do anything." Well, that may be true, but Bob Kerrey's doing things, and I'm working with him.
Yeah.
I've established, he's got a project, and I've got a project, and we're working on it together. So there were all across the state of Nebraska, from the first day I was governor until the last day I was in the Senate. There were things going on that I was working on.
Do you think people in Nebraska felt that they could tip up at the governor's mansion and sit down and have a cup of coffee with you and have a conversation about
Yeah.
anything?
More
Yeah.
likely to show up at the zoo bar on a Friday night to sit at the bar and drink Jack Daniels with me. But yeah, they could. Yeah, I would say that I was in both the Senate and the governor's office very accessible.
Yeah.
And you
Yes.
had, I mean, again, back to how did I win? I mean, I spent a lot of, I know exactly what the flight was, flying out of Washington, D.C. on Friday afternoon and fly back to Nebraska. And I'd do 2 or 3 events on Friday night. I'd work all day
Mhm.
Saturday, work all day Sunday, and fly
Mm.
back on Monday morning. By work,
Mm.
I mean, I'd travel the state and work and meet with groups. And sometimes it was town hall meetings, and sometimes it was actually meeting to build something.
I think that's that. I think you're being very modest. I think that's a big part. I mean, I feel intuitively that's a big part of the appeal that you had. And one of the things we're thinking about now is how types of people resonate with voters. And I think your accessibility, the fact that you were constructing things,
Yeah.
building things, that you were conservative fiscally, I think that has a resonance in the Midwest that is very strong.
Well, I think, and, there's some practical examples of that. So when I was governor, if I ever did anything unpopular, and sometimes you do. So,
Mm.
I signed a seatbelt law requiring
Wow.
people to wear seatbelts. Jesus, my polling numbers went in the toilet. And I just called a special session of the legislature and cut the budget. My numbers went back up. So
Mm.
there's, I'm joking, but not seriously joking. I mean, there are times
Mm.
when um, you're going to do something that the public doesn't want, because they
Mm.
elected you to decide what's the right thing. They didn't
Mm.
elect you to blow around with public opinion, and I never blew
Yeah.
around with public opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think that resonates with Scott and myself, because there are times when you have to do things with clients that they absolutely don't want to do. And um, it can make for a pretty uncomfortable 3 to 6 months. But when it comes right at the end of the day, they see you were right, and it's it's what's in the best interest of the voters in the end will end up benefiting you, I think.
Oh, by the way, I'm not sure they see that I was right. I mean, the voters who I initially put the seatbelt thing on the ballot and repealed it. So, part of it was, for me, I was never really afraid of losing, never really
Right,
afraid of walking away and doing something else.
right.
I mean, I enjoyed it. It was an honor to do it. But my motto in life came from a poem by E. E. Cummings, who wrote a poem about conscientious objector. I dream of Olaf in the First World War. Cummings was in the First World War, and this conscientious objector was killed by fellow soldiers. And he said at some point in the poem, "There is some shit I will not eat." And
Right,
the reason that's a model for me is there's some shit I will eat.
right.
You have to decide, which is the unpleasant meal and that you're going to eat, and which is the unpleasant meal you're not going to eat. And you can't you can't walk away from the requirement of doing something that somebody doesn't like.
Right,
And sometimes you lose a friend.
right.
So the hardest thing in politics is saying no to a friend. Saying no to an enemy is easy.
Yes, yeah. But do you think the voters in Nebraska sensed that you were that independent and they respected you for it?
Oh, I hope that they sensed that I liked them and that
Yeah.
I respected them. Um, their stories, where they were, who they were, the odds against them being successful out there.
Mm.
It's the prairies is an unforgiving piece of land. So
Yeah.
I think I hope sense that I respected them.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so if we give me an example, gun control is another wildly contentious issue. And I voted for two
Mhm.
pieces of gun control legislation
Mhm.
when I was out there. But if you were my media people and you came in either 82, 88, 88 or 94, I would take you to a Walmart
Mhm.
in the fall, where you'd see a dad and his son, a dad buying his son a gun, his first gun. They'd buy it
Right.
together, and so it's a hunting culture.
Right.
I don't own guns. I don't trust myself with guns, so I don't have a gun myself. But I respect the people that hunt. And I respect that the relationship that they have with their guns is
Mm.
relatively safe. And even with the
Mm.
Brady bill, their what they didn't like was it was going to turn authority over to their local sheriff, and they didn't trust their local sheriff. So
Mm.
even there, I tried to vote in a way that was not insulting.
Let me ask you another question, which is all about, which is actually still about connection with the voters. You're a writer and a reflective person, and very often that doesn't mean that people are great communicators every day on everyday issues. Did you find a way to take complex ideas and make them something really simple for voters to understand?
Well, oftentimes the first challenger is taking something complicated and making it simple for me. Forget the voters for the moment. And that really is the best example. Really is trade. The
Right.
North American Free Trade Agreement was a '93 agreement, actually negotiated by Republicans, and then Clinton picked it up and delivered it for ratification to the Senate. That was a complicated issue, um, and uh, and not a situation where it was all victories and all losses. It was not a zero sum proposition, and it was a part of pretty dramatic change going on in the economy.
Hmm.
And I voted in the affirmative, but it was explaining that to people who are labor union guys who were saying, all of our jobs are going to Mexico. Um, uh, it wasn't a question of being complicated. It was a question of saying we have to adjust. We can meet that I think, in fact, we did meet the competition. Although
Hmm.
you never guess that listening to the debate today.
Right.
But it's so yes, it was complicated, and I had to make an effort to understand it. There were parts of it I didn't like. That's another
Hmm.
thing that you're dealing with. If I got 1,000 votes, maybe 100 of them I'm 51% certain when I cast the vote.
Right.
on Monday, and then on the next morning, I'm 49% certain it's too damn late.
Right.
You don't get to vote maybe.
Right. Did you view yourself as more of an independent than a Democrat, or did you depart from party orthodoxy a lot? I mean, I'm getting the sense that you were not exactly a centrist, but you took some independent stands.
Yeah, I would say, particularly over time, I've become more capable of describing myself as a liberal as opposed to a progressive, for example. So
Right.
there are many people on in the Democratic side who would not like the way I vote as a consequence of me saying, "Wait a minute, there's a limit. The money is coming from taxpayer." So when I hear,
Mm.
and I voted for Mondami here in New York, but when I hear him say we're gonna have free childcare, there's no such thing as free childcare. I've got to collect taxes from one group of people and spend it on another group of people. It's a transfer arrangement, and I'm very
Right.
conscious of that. And from my business background, I would sometimes irritate Republicans or Democrats because anytime you regulate, I mean, I've got one employee right now, and I have 3 state agencies that regulate me here in New York. What the hell's that all about? What great good are you accomplishing with that? So I'm very
Hmm.
sensitive to regulation, very sensitive
Right.
to spending, and oftentimes find myself with Democrats shaking their head and saying, well, he's not a real Democrat because
Mm.
he won't spend money like I want to and he won't regulate like I want to.
Yeah, so on that point, I just want to ask because an image is emerging now in my head of you as a person and of your politics, and I'm kind of seeing a consistency over time, even though you feel you've moved maybe a little bit more liberal on some issues. Do you see a consistent thread that ran through your political career?
Yeah, I do. But it's a thread with more than one color of fabric. It's got a little bit of red and a little bit of blue running through
Right.
it. It's more of a piece of rope than it is a thread. So
Right.
yeah, I do. I mean, I, when I get injured, the government saved my life.
Right.
I've been in and out of hospitals. Maybe the most passionate I have about government services. When I go to the VA, they never ask me, "How are you going to pay for this?"
Mm.
And
Mm.
I never worry that I'm not going to be able to afford whatever it is that I need the older I get. Now, I also go to private healthcare as well because I can afford to do that. But at the same time, inside of my bony little head, I'm saying, yeah, it's true. They saved your life, but they damn near killed you before. So,
Right.
and government has a way of doing that. When we opened our restaurant in 1975, we got blown away in a tornado 18 months after we opened.
Mm.
And the SBA came in and provided financial assistance to put our business back together. So, the tornado wipes us out and the government helps us put it back together. And then the government comes in with all kinds of regulations to make it difficult for us to operate. I'm not,
Mm.
I'm just mindful that, the good Lord gives and the good Lord taketh away. So I don't have a consistent thread where I'd say I'm pro government intervention in the lives of people. On the other hand, I'm very much aware that there are times it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. I understand that as someone who had free university education in the UK, and my mother was very ill, and we never had to worry about the cost of healthcare. On the other hand, I don't like paying a 50% tax rate, so it's kind of a
So you move,
balance.
so you moved to New York.
Yes.
Be more.
Explain that to me. You don't like a 50% tax rate and you moved to New York.
Well, that's because I don't see myself in Texas somehow. I don't. But
Yeah, I know that feeling.
I just want to ask you about your restaurant experience.
Yes.
The reason I ask is that my partner ran a restaurant, his family restaurant, for 10, 12 years in Buffalo. And I just wonder if there's anything about running a restaurant or a restaurant business that sets you up well for a career in politics.
Oh, yes. I mean, first of all, everything I'm talking about in business. I mean, you're constantly facing government regulation. So I have and I have experience with minimum wage and all kinds of other things that tend to overlap with things that the Congress or the state government wants to do. But perhaps most importantly, you're serving people.
Right.
You're all kinds of people you like and people you don't like. If they walk in the door and they're sitting down in a booth and they want to make you give them a menu, you can dislike them, but you're serving them.
Right.
And you,
Right.
so yeah, I think service side of running a restaurant helped me a lot.
I think that there was a study done. My partner's told me about this of what makes a successful restaurant, and this was in the 70s, so it may not be the same today. But the top ranking attribute which made people come back was not the food; it was, do they know my name? Am I more than just a customer? Am I a person to them? And I think that's why I asked the question about the connection with politics, because I can see how that sense of seeing everyone thinks of you as thinking of them as an individual, as opposed to just part of a demographic group, I think makes a huge difference. The second most important thing, interestingly, was the state of the bathrooms. So do they know my name in the bathrooms? Nothing to do with the quality of the food, by the way. So take that for what it's worth.
Well, unfortunately, I agree with that. I mean, it is something I learned. I was more involved with the bar than I was with the restaurant. But I was involved with the restaurant. But in terms of actual work, it was more likely that I'd be sitting behind a bar with customers in front of me and at the bar, and knowing not their names, knowing their first name was what mattered. And when you walk into a place and it's hi Jim, hi Bob, hi Sally, whatever, you feel at home. And so and I think it definitely carried over into politics. Not like I'm the greatest person in remembering names, but people want you to remember their name. It's not unreasonable.
Somebody said that Ted Kennedy's great strength was that he could walk into a bar in Boston and have a conversation with anybody there about anything.
So could I.
There you go. The secret is unlocked.
Not for much longer today.
Let me ask you about very briefly. Let me divert to the new school. Was there? I mean, you have was your career in politics, your career in business, more useful when you led the new school?
No, they're all different and all contribute in different ways. I mean, the new school. I'd never done it before. I had no background. In fact, if you asked me if I was on the board of directors of the new school, would I hire me? The answer would be no. I have a degree in pharmacy and an advanced degree in demolitions. It doesn't exactly fit at one of the most liberal universities in the world. So no, I would say it wasn't a great fit. I was very good at building and very good at raising money and very good at making sort of the administrative decisions that had to be made to take it from where it was to where it was when I left, which was a better university. I've acquired a great deal of respect for the importance of higher education, and actually I didn't have going in, and the difficulty and the importance of finding people willing to serve on boards of directors, which may be the weak link in higher education still today. So yeah, it's and respect for both the people who are teaching and the people who are administering inside of those operations. Even before Donald Trump tried to blow up higher education in America and take us from having a comparative advantage to having a disadvantage with the rest of the world. So yeah, I learned a lot from that experience. I served 2 5-year terms, and 10 years was enough. I felt like I was, and one of the things we had to do in SEAL team was hold our breath on a 25 meters underwater swim. And I know what it's like to feel like, okay, I've had enough. And I felt like I was holding my breath for 10 years. So it was good to move on.
So if we fast forward now and come up to modern times, or today rather, on the Democratic side, are there any figures where you look at them and you say, my goodness, these people, this person has got it, this person could make a real difference?
Let me give you a little something on the branding side if you're trying to figure out why I did well in Nebraska. I understood before I ran for office in 1982 what it was like to meet somebody in the government who was abusing their power. They had the power over you. They say yes, you could sail on through. They say no, and you don't sail on through. And some of these individuals, they were unhappy. They had a bad experience, and they were in fourth grade or whatever, and they abused the power of their office. And I saw it on the elected side as well.
Yeah.
And from day one when I was governor, from day one when I was senator, all the way through that time, anybody they had hired understood that the only way to get fired from me was to abuse power, was to treat somebody as if you were better than they were, because you're the senator's staff person, you're the governor's staff person. That was a one-way ticket to lose your job. So it was I don't know if it was noticed by the voters. I hope it was, but it was certainly something that and we helped people who were in trouble, either with a big government or big business. Oftentimes the same damn thing. We would stop what we're doing and help somebody that was in trouble with the government or with business.
I think that's a very interesting perspective for a Democrat, because I agree with it that the naive belief that government is always beneficent is a really risky one, because before I left the UK and I was involved in local politics, there was no worse landlord to have than the local housing authority, because they simply disregarded the tenants all the time. And there's no guarantee that government is going to be, well, I'm wandering off a little bit on my own hobby horse, but I think you have to be cautious when you think about government, not to always think it's going to be helpful to people.
Well, I think it's possible that it answers the question, why did I win in 82, 88, and 94? We really did make an effort to never abuse the power of the office. And the flip side of that, the office has a lot of power.
Yeah.
You can deploy that power because oftentimes you're dealing with is one individual who's getting screwed by their employer or getting screwed by the government.
Yeah.
You know, and if Senator Blowhard writes them a letter, threatening their lives, oftentimes you see change happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Senator Blowhard in that case.
Let me ask you,
advice. Is that like advice that you would give to candidates, or is that just your personal reflection?
Definitely, I would definitely, but it's not so. There's not much you can do. It's a promise I think is important to make, but it's more important. It's a promise to implement, and you implement it when you hire people. We temporarily have the power of the governor's office. We temporarily have the power of the United States Senate office. Never abuse that power. Never act like you're superior to somebody because you're working in the governor's or the senator's office. And on the other hand, if there's somebody that is in trouble that we want to help, or the power of that office can be beneficial to them, deploy it, use it.
Right.
I love that. I mean, I love how they complement each other. It's such a beautiful worldview.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting listening to you now. I don't know who talks like that today. Really, I don't know anyone who would. Do you think Osborne running in Nebraska has similar points of view to you now?
I don't know. I think what Dan has got that's really important. He looks good when he's rolling himself. I mean, that one ad where he's coming out from underneath the car, where he's repairing a car. He's he's everyman, and I think that helps a lot. And I hope he wins. I think it'd be a very, very important change inside of the Senate. But somebody,
I think I put money on him winning, to be honest with you.
Did you happen to do you read the New York Times?
No, I don't really. Is he covered in that today?
No. Why don't you read the New York Times?
I just go to other places for news now.
Where?
Substack mostly.
Okay, so the New York Times is still a good newspaper, and they have They have a bias. I've learned to watch for bias. I have my own biases, and I look for biases that align with my own.
Right.
That make me feel. Anyway, the Times did a story on the impact that billionaires are having on American politics, and it was startling. One of those where they let the journalists write 4,000 words and they put it on the front page, and they had lots of research people backing them up. But in 4 election cycles ago, that's 4 years. 4 election cycles ago, 2% of all spending at the federal level came from billionaires. It was 17% in 2024, and it's going up. So and they focused on Montana, where John Tester lost to a guy named Sheehy. The first thing that happened to Sheehy was what's the guy's name? I'll think of one of these big billionaire guys invested $150 million in his company, and his company was using helicopters to put out forest fires. Not exactly a company immediately draw $150 million investment. That got him going. 60 billionaires contributed $47 million to his campaign. Sheehy's campaign
in Montana.
Montana. So you've got, and they figured out that they can preserve, for example, the current tax code. If you're a billionaire, there's no reason for you to be paying taxes.
No,
you basically borrow money, and that's your income. You can deduct the interest. So it's I'm just saying that there's a substantial change that's going on in politics today that makes it difficult to have a conversation about branding, because there's so much money getting spent and these campaigns that have nothing to do with the candidates. In this case, neither they were proposing things in independent expenditures that neither candidate proposed. The amount of independent money spent in Montana was more than both the candidates themselves spent. So they're electing ghosts.
Yeah. That's a very interesting.
That was all to cheer you up, Vaughn. I don't know if I was. You look like you're enjoying this conversation too much.
Yes. Well, balance is always good. You're a man of balance.
Yeah.
So let's just the Democratic field for 2028. Is there anyone in there that's shaping up in a way that makes you feel confident right now?
Well, I think it's shaping up. There's a backlash against Trump, against the way he behaves. So, to begin with, lies and insults. Even though you still got, I don't know, 35-40% of support of people who are not offended by his lies and insults. Although I still have MAGA friends who wish he didn't do that all the time. And so I think there's going to be a backlash against the deportation of people. I think there's a backlash against his saying, I get to decide, we're going to invade Iran, we're going to overthrow the government of Venezuela, and Cuba's next, and I think there's going to be a backlash against him. We just lost you, but hey, that's a mountain. A picture of a mountain just replaced you for a moment, Vaughn. That was very Zen-like. Anyways, I think there's going to be a backlash, and I think there's going to be a lot of really younger, interesting people coming and thinking into politics. We already saw it in Virginia and New Jersey with Cheryl and I'm blanking on her name down in Virginia. So I think you're going to get a lot of change. The problem, and money's going to matter a great deal, but to be the Democratic nominee for president, this I know, you have to have a majority of the delegates at the convention.
Right.
At some point, it comes down to a number. So if you're going to go to the convention as the governor of California, you got 30% of the delegates will likely be behind you. So Gavin's going to have a big head start. Secondly, he got to be able to get a crowd excited. It's entertainment at some level. The crowd doesn't want to leave. Say, well, I like you, but God, I fell asleep while I was talking. You've got to get a crowd excited. So you have to be good at oratory. You have to learn
Right.
how to. It's a technique, and it matters. It's like whether it's opera or music, whatever you're talking about. I need to. That audience wants to be excited when they leave. And there's other things as well. The issues you got to align with and so forth. But so it's going to be you're going to see Gavin Newsom will have a big advantage because of California. So will the governor of Virginia. So will the governor of New Jersey. If either one of those two women run, they got national security backgrounds. I've never been in their audience. I've watched Josh Shapiro. Pennsylvania's a big state. Josh wins re-election. He gets people excited. It matters. Gavin, by the way, is dyslexic, which gives him a huge advantage, meaning that he can't read a speech. He's got to memorize it before he goes in. So he has a tactical advantage as well. I think Pritzker has been covering himself with glory as a Democrat. Right. So I think, and he could self-fund. Cory Booker's breaking Strom Thurmond's record for a filibuster. Was enormously important. Democrats paid attention to that. So people are looking. We want a leader, I think. Now I'm incorporating I've gone from they to we. We want a leader. We want somebody with a demonstrated capability of leading. It almost doesn't matter what their record was. What matters is, do we have confidence that they can lead? And are they going to lead in a way that isn't Donald Trump? Somebody's going to tell us the truth 80% of the time. I'm not a fanatic about truth telling. But I want at least 80%. And I don't want a president who's constantly insulting and belittling their opponents. On the other hand, whoever gets that job in 29, we've got a set of problems. I'd rather play our hand than any other country, but we've done a lot of damage to our reputation globally. And Trump's not done yet. So there's going to be a lot of repair that needs to occur. It's going to be a harder job than the job that Joe Biden got when he was elected in 20.
Well, it's interesting that nearly all the names you mention are governors of states, and that brings me back to the building. And you came back to the building thought, which is going to be 4 years of rebuilding and then building back on top of what's been rebuilt. I think it's a tough road to hoe. So
there's another name that I didn't throw in there who was a mayor of Chicago, a member of the House of Representatives, and a former ambassador to Japan. Rahm
Emanuel.
I mean, Rahm is what Rahm has got is he's got cojones, and people know it. And so that we do want somebody who's tough enough to be able to stand up to whatever opposition we've got in the world, and there's plenty of it. So Rahm is not in office at all. It could be he will definitely influence the outcome of the 20 nomination process.
The name you don't mention is Buttigieg. Too quiet, too intellectual.
No, that was an unintentional oversight. I mean, Pete's an interesting character all by himself. First of all, he was a mayor. He was a member of the administration. He had an administrative job. But what he does really, really well is something you asked me if I ever did. I don't do it anywhere near like he does. He can take something really complicated and explain it to an audience, and he can explain it to a hostile audience.
Yes.
The other one who does a really good job of that, he's not going to run for president, but he'll be important, is God, you think I am becoming an old fart here. Is Bernie.
Right.
And the Republicans are having so much fun, demonizing AOC. They're not going to demonize her if she comes into their state and campaigns against them. That woman knows how to deliver a message.
Yeah.
She is smart and she's impressive. And I'm glad she's on our team. She's not going to be the presidential nominee, but she'll have an impact on the outcome of the 28 race.
Waitress to Congresswoman in 3 years is a great story.
Well, I think she's got some asteroid named after her as well. I mean, she's more than just a waitress. She's got a good education and good intellectual background.
Oh yeah, but for public consumption, I think that's the twist. So great. Yeah. Well, look, this was amazing. I think we've got so much Now we'll meet again on Friday to do it all again, but but this was amazing, and I think we've got so much to talk about on Friday. I'm going to redo the questions a little bit to fit with the flow, but I think we're in great shape.
Bob, thank you again for joining us and for a conversation that was as insightful as it was unexpected. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to the Face Forward podcast. And if you're a campaign manager or a candidate interested in learning more about how to become the face of the change voters are seeking, you can reach out to Vaughn Emsley or Scott Buckley on LinkedIn or visit the Face Forward page. And as always, a quick note. The views expressed in this conversation are those of Bob Kerrey and do not necessarily reflect those of Face Forward. We'll be back with our next episode on Tuesday. Thanks for joining us.